of the Cripple Connection Podcast. As always, my name is Cody Lashley. I am joined by my partner in crime, Jeffrey Redmond. Jeffrey, what's up, brother?
Hey Cody, how you doing, man? Great to be here as always.
I'm doing good, man. Another week, another day in the life, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah, ain't nothing to it but to get to it, man. We have
Exactly.
a fun show in store for us today. We're going to be talking some Last of Us Part 2
Oh
and
yeah.
all the new gameplay and all the things that were revealed. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit about press conferences in general and how games are displayed for the first time to the public and is that changing? And that's going to be what we discuss today. If you like the content, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to be a part of what we're doing here and you want to make sure that you see all our new episodes, hit the subscribe button. Maybe hit the notification bell. And you can interact with me and Jeffrey as we talk about video juegos, dude. All right, man. Jeffrey, you had some news you wanted to go over, right? You wanted to start
Yeah.
with this. Let me make sure I share it here so that way you can be looking. But yeah, you wanted to talk some Xenoblade Chronicles first.
Yes. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition got released today. For those who are unaware, it was a game on the original Wii back in 2010. God, I can't believe it's been that long. But it was part of a petition called Operation Rainfall, where a select few games were brought over from Japan and translated into English. They had over like 10,000 signatures or something like that, so they managed to get the game released over here in the West. But it was released in very limited quantities, so not a lot of people got to play it. And 2 years after that, it was released on the new Nintendo 3DS, but because of that, it had to have a bunch of like downgrades in terms of graphics, and the performance was really crappy. So nobody really played that version. Well, now, today, right now on the Nintendo Switch, either buying a physical copy or going on the eShop, you can buy this definitive edition. It's the exact same game, but the textures and the overall look of the game has changed a little bit. The characters look a little bit more anime, so if you like that kind of look, the faces have had a major overhaul. But yeah, it's the same game. It's an open world game. It was one of the best reviewed Wii games like ever. So if you've never had a chance to play it before, now's your chance, and you can pick it up for about $60. So yeah,
Jeffrey, I
that's
remember this game being like at a time when I was very not happy with the current state of the Final Fantasy franchise, and I'm a
exactly.
huge JRPG nerd, and I remember looking at it being like, dude, this is the Final Fantasy that I want, and it's
Yeah,
this obscure Nintendo Wii game that no one could
yeah.
get their hands on, and you had to kind of. I remember I had friends that were that pirated it online and played the
It's an
PC
amazing
version.
game.
Yeah, and a
It
lot
is.
of people love this game.
Yeah, it's it has a lot in common with a massively multiplayer online role playing game. So you've
Yep.
got a lot of the same like auto attacks and stuff, but it's the characters and the story, man. And funny thing about this game is I've had a very terrible time with this game. Not the game itself. The game is amazing, but my experiences with the game have not been particularly great. I ordered a copy for the Wii when it first came out, and it never arrived, for one. And by the time I went back to try to go get it, it was sold out, and I couldn't find it unless I wanted to pay like $130 for a Wii game, which I refused to do.
And yeah,
Um,
who wants to do that?
and I got the 3DS version, but it kept freezing up. So maybe finally I can actually finish this damn game. But within the first 20 minutes of this game, I was crying. Like, I have not cried in a video game for years up until that point. And the first 30 minutes, what happens in this game, it hits you at your emotional core, and you're pissed at it for the rest of the game, and you want to kick ass. So, just from a story perspective, it's phenomenal. The characters are great. All the actors, I believe, are British, so it's got that little bit of a British
Yeah,
flair
actually,
to
I
it.
remember hearing at the time that a lot of voice acting work was coming from the UK and New Zealand.
In New Zealand too,
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's definitely cool. It's not the traditional run of the mill voice actors.
not at
Yeah,
all.
I mean, I don't have a Nintendo Switch, but I mean, this is the kind of game that I mean, essentially, even though this is like a remake, I mean, you could call it a remake.
It is a remake. Yeah,
It's a definitive edition, and
right.
this is something that would cause me to buy a Nintendo
Yes,
Switch, just because
and
I
I
love JRPGs and stories,
yeah,
and I never got to play it the first time around, but I vividly remember this game and another game from Mistwalker Studios, from the original creator of Final Fantasy, had put out a game for the Nintendo. It was for the Nintendo Wii at the time,
yeah.
and everyone, they were critically acclaimed. Everyone
Oh,
said,
you know what? That's the last story is what you're
yes,
talking
the
about,
last,
and that
yes,
and
yes.
funnily enough, that's part of the Operation Rainfall I was talking about. That was one of the three games besides Xenoblade that was brought over here, so it was all part
Right,
of the
and I
same
remember
initiative.
that. And I remember wanting to play them so bad because,
Yeah,
dude, Final Fantasy just sucked, man. Like
yeah,
I don't know. I never played 11, and then Final Fantasy 12 was just I wasn't a fan of
yeah,
it. It just wasn't my
mhm,
favorite. But I do remember seeing this and wanting to play this, and it looks
yeah,
beautiful, man. For a Nintendo game, I mean, they've really gotten it
yeah.
down pat on how to make these games look nice and look big and beautiful and
Mhm.
wonderful. But um, and that's available now.
Yes, available today actually. So go out and get your copy while you still
All
can.
right. So if you're a Nintendo Switch owner, um, check it out. We also had one more um, game on the agenda today that you wanted to talk
Yep,
about, and it's
yep,
Dead by Daylight, getting some new
yep,
downloadable content.
yep.
And
Sure is.
hit the volume here. So yeah, why
So
don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about it?
So, Dead by Daylight is, of course, the killer game where you've got four survivors and one killer, um, and you stalk them around the map. It's a multiplayer game. So they're no stranger to getting franchises. They have like movie franchises, like Halloween. They've got Michael Myers. They've got Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They've got a whole bunch of other stuff from horror franchises. But this is the first time that they have actually managed to maintain and obtain um, characters from another game franchise. So this is Silent Hill. Um, Anybody who's a horror fan or anybody who's a Konami fan, hell, anybody who knows anything about video games, has had a brush with Silent Hill at one time or another. So right here we see um, the killer here is Pyramid Head. He is like the quintessential horror that you think of for Silent Hill. And then Heather Mason here is from Silent Hill 3.
Oh
So
shit!
I just thought it was really, really neat and kind of a blow, honestly. I can look at it both ways. Because it's awesome to see Silent Hill back in some capacity, because there was that whole thing with Kojima getting fired and then taking away his Silent Hill project,
Right.
which eventually turned into Death Stranding down the road with his individual company. But originally, he was going to make another Silent Hill game
Which
with Norman
everyone was
Reedus.
excited for and pumped
Right.
for, and then Konami decided, no, you can't have good things.
So it's just really cool, and this is one of the main areas from Silent Hill 3. If I'm no, I'm sorry. This is Silent Hill 1. This area is from Silent Hill 1.
Okay.
This is the elementary school that you run through to find Cheryl. People probably either have every idea what I'm talking about or they have no damn clue what I'm talking about. Um, but it's great to see it back. Pyramid Head is like one of my favorite horror characters ever. So to see him with a giant ass sword just going around and screwing shit up is great.
So I never played Dead by Daylight before. I've never been
Okay.
super huge into survival horror. My favorite of all time is Resident Evil 4. It's just one of my favorite games of all time, period.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, I've never been a big Silent Hill fan, and I've never been a big Resident Evil fan, or I've never been someone that frequented those series. But if I mean, I have seen a bunch of people play this on Twitch and on YouTube, and it has a huge following. Dead by Daylight, a lot of people love to play this, and it's cool when you see a title that isn't a big name AAA title get some love and get some cool content that brings other new fans. You know, maybe you've never played Dead by Daylight, but you've never played it before, but you know you're a huge fan of Silent Hill, and this is something that brings you to the game and makes you play it for the first time. So
exactly. So yeah, I just thought it was cool. It's a different approach. Like I said, you know, they've gotten other franchises before, but to actually get characters and stuff from a completely different game is a little unheard of, especially with Silent Hill being the way it is. So I just thought it was really cool. Plus, I just love Pyramid Head. It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking terrifying. I mean, if you're watching it, it's nightmare fuel for sure. Especially that right there. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, the cage. That's all Silent Hill stuff. I mean, if you know the lore, you know all about this stuff. But yeah, and that's pretty cool too. They've pretty much paid attention to the Silent Hill lore. So if you know anything about that, you'll recognize this cage. You'll recognize Pyramid Head's appearance, not just in terms of him being there, but the actual physical appearance that he's taking specifically for Dead by Daylight. You will recognize that. So they clearly know their Silent Hill lore, and at least are trying to pay attention to it, which is nice. Because a lot of times when you get these other franchises involved, they tend to take liberties. But here it seems that they're doing their very best to stay on track. So I really admire that. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly show that off and talk about that in case nobody knew about that, because Dead by Daylight isn't the biggest game out there. So I just wanted to kind of shine some light on that pretty quick.
So hey, if you're a fan of Dead by Daylight or Silent Hill, check it out. It might be for you. And Jeffrey, that brings us to what we're actually going to be talking about today, and that's The Last of Us. And man, what a development cycle and past few months it's been for Naughty Dog.
Definitely.
They dealt with a ton of leaks online. People then read those leaks and were unhappy about them. All these crazy things happen, and they have to push the game back. Yeah, this game was delayed, right? And I believe we talked about it.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out like May 24th. Actually, it was already supposed to be out by now. And, you know, the coronavirus and everything else kind of pushed it back. Like you said, and I think we did cover this as well, there was, you know, a lot of leaks as far as the ending goes. And, it went through hell. And I feel really bad for Naughty Dog because they have worked their ass off on this game, and pretty much, you know, anything they do, but specifically this, they were really excited for, and to have all this kind of happen to them,
it's really weird. It spoils the artwork of the whole thing. But I want to make a recommendation that if you're watching us, comment on the video, and we're going to be playing the video and watching the video, but I would prefer, and it would be best if you ingest this video first, go and watch the whole thing, and then come back and listen to us if you're not listening to this live, because we're gonna kind of jump around. I had a lot of thoughts about this game as soon as I saw it, and now, especially in light of things going on in the world, I feel like this game is so apropos, man. It's come at like a real convenient time to hit on some very real fears that are plaguing, I mean, quite literally plaguing us,
literally.
So let's go ahead and do that now. Jeffrey, I'm going to toss it up to you first. This is now, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later too, this is now the fourth or fifth press conference that we're seeing now that has presented in a way like this in a by a conference, a video that's put out online for people to digest and to kind of introduce new gameplay to their audience at large. And we're going to talk about the format of the whole thing, what we like about it, what we don't like about it. But right now, let's just jump into everything that we saw in this presentation. I feel obviously, if you're a fan of this franchise, it tells a very deep, dark story about essentially a cordyceps mushroom type of spore that infects people. And it gets dark and very brutal and very violent. And Jeffrey, what were your initial thoughts about this presentation?
I thought it was brilliant. I'm waiting. I'm like itching. I want this game to be out now, and if things had gone as planned, it would be. But just The Last of Us, and really any great. I hesitate to call this a zombie game, but I mean, the spore is essentially zombies and infected and
survival horror. It's their own
survival
play
horror.
It's their own play on the zombie trope. So yeah, that's an okay comparison.
But the biggest thing about this game is the characters. I remember playing the original Last of Us on the PlayStation 3, and I thought it was probably one of the greatest games that had ever graced the console. Just the character development of Joel, who's the older man you may have seen, the stuff that happens to him in the first game, and then the connection that he forms with Ellie here, who is most likely going to be the main character of the game. That's the interesting thing, I thought, about this reveal, was that we didn't see a lot of Joel, but Joel is old at this point. Not like decrepit old, but pretty old. So it looks like we're going to be taking control of Ellie for the most part, which is awesome because she's like badass. I mean, the stuff she does just in this trailer alone, and seeing how much she has grown from being this timid character in the very beginning of the first game, now to being like this ruthless
killer, hunter, and assassin. And I love it. I love a powerful female lead protagonist, a main character that they're not trying to shove down your throat for the force of, or for feminism's sake or what have you. It's just a female character, and she's grown up in this ridiculously tough world, experienced some real hardcore shit, and she has to adapt to her environment. And part of the reason why I was excited about talking to you about this today, Jeffrey, is because we've talked a lot about immersion and how much a game can pull you in, and if it gets you to believe the narrative that it's telling, it helps to immerse you in the gameplay as well. And exactly. I mean, look, go over the story here and some of the things that we've already seen. I mean, buzz me when you hear some of the words that are familiar. They're dealing with quarantine zones. They're dealing with violent uprisings and protests and all kinds of different factions. And I mean, these are all things that very easily play off the real fears and the things that are happening to us right now.
Right now.
And, and how people of all different belief systems and values come to navigate that world and how they choose to think about it and what they do with it.
Exactly.
And it's just a really fascinating, it's such a fantastic time for a game like this to come out. Because I think, if anything, our recent world has shown us, whether it's politically or through viruses that you can't see, or evil corporate overlords overhead, or what have you, this deals in all of those subjects in a way that, even though this is a post-apocalyptic future with crazy monsters and creatures, this doesn't feel so far-fetched when you feel like all of the staples that hold up our economy and our culture, they're all built on things that are so easily torn away from us in a moment's notice. And I found it so awesome that we're going to be able to play an experience like this at a time when we're going through things that kind of help us to closer relate to the characters and what they're going through.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the situation. I mean, it's fantastical in its own right. But as you said, we're going through a tough period right now with all this going on with quarantine and stuff. And as you said, people deal with things in different ways. And I really think, like you said, this is a great time for this to come out. Shifting gears a tad.
Yeah.
I've played and beaten the original Last of Us like 6 times, no joke. Right. So one of the main things I noticed about this trailer is that they're not trying to, I call it a trailer, but it's a gameplay demonstration. Right. It looks like a trailer now because they haven't really done
it. It is both. Great. I mean, it is essentially a 23 some odd minute trailer, and then at the end they show you a part of a level that you will play through.
But the thing is, like, they haven't completely reinvented the wheel here, and I don't think there's any reason to. Everything that's present in this game was present in the first one to a certain degree. There's a little bit more flexibility here in terms of like the world is a bit more open. Obviously, the map is bigger. You're going to be able to ride around a horse for that, apparently. But like the combat and the overall like overarching thing of like distracting people and flanking them and crafting things on the fly or pitting enemy things against each other if they're in the same room, that kind of stuff, that was all present in the first game. So they're not trying to like completely redo everything, but I think that's a smart move because I don't really think there's a need to do that.
I don't think so either. And it seems as though when you have a tried and true formula, you really just kind of want to build on what you have. And one of the things that you and I have been talking about in how it pertains to open worlds and how the environment is just as much of the story as anything else. So some of the new things that we do see with this is, they want to continue to tell that narrative where the environment has taken back over everything. Cities are overrun with growth and greenery, and it's how people kind of move and interact in that environment in that time in this kind of post-apocalyptic future. And one of the things that they are introducing now is traversing the land through vehicles. So you see right here we have her on Ellie on horseback. You're going to be able to use that to move around the map. There are going to be areas that are so flooded you're going to have to use a boat to get to them, which, by the way, should have a ton of brilliant jump scare the shit out of you moments.
I would imagine
While you're riding in your boat. But it really does. It does try to drive home that Walking Dead vibe. That this tragedy has happened. People have been incredibly affected by it, and everyone's response is different. I mean, we see different factions, which continues upon what happened in the original one. But I felt so much that while you're playing this, even though you play Ellie and you're gonna interact with Joel and brand new characters, like it'll be easier for someone to understand and empathize with these characters when they understand, like, man, there is easily a scenario where this isn't too far off in our very own future, potentially. And I mean, now maybe that's a little bit over dramatic, but I do think that, it does add to the feel and the experience of this game that people are going to be playing very soon. And it does kind of add a new context to it.
It definitely. I mean, obviously, the game looks better.
Yes.
This is coming at the tail end of, pretty much the PlayStation 4's capability, which is funny because The Last of Us came at the end of the PlayStation 3's capability. So it's literally like it's the, getting toward of being
like it's The Last of Us, the us being
literally.
the us being whatever console generation it's born in.
So I think I thought that was really cool. Well, I mean, I know that probably wasn't planned that way. I thought that was an interesting little thing. Just the lighting in this game seems a lot better than the original. Like I said, the original before it was remastered, and even after remastering it, I got to tell you, I mean, it's a good looking game for the time, but you could definitely, after replaying the remastered a few days ago, it definitely started to show its age.
Right.
And that's not to say it's a bad game, just that it's nearly 2 console generations old at this point. And there was only a limited number of enemies they could have on screen. There were frame hiccups in a few places. The lighting wasn't, the best, and that's just a limitation of the hardware at the time, more so than anything. But it's very clear here that they're expanding everything, but also really keeping it to its roots. So you've got that vision sense there. You had that in the first one. You do that to kind of plan your roots. The other thing that they mentioned is that now you're going to have to contend with dogs, and dogs are a little bit more. They are indeed another facet of the game, but here you're not just going to be able to hide around a corner. You're going to have to constantly be moving and changing, the locations you're at. You can't just, like in the original game, I remember just camping in one specific area, letting the enemies come to me and then, kicking their ass one by one. But it seems now that everything's a little bit more dynamic. There's an actual dodge button now, like a legitimate dodge button.
Yeah, and they're showing it now. I mean, it really does make it look like fast, flowing, like legit combat, which does look great.
Yeah, and they did say, you're going to have to master that timing. That's not something that you're just going to be able to pick up, right away. And I mean, some, God gamers may be able to do that, but, it's going to take you a while to master all that. I imagine, based on the enemy and the amount of things on screen that you're going to have to be able to time things very specifically. And just, at least just a badass dude. Like,
she's such a badass. No, she's awesome, man. And I love her as the main character. And it's I don't know. There's something so different about like a young woman being viciously violent, but also because she has to be, It's just a character I want to play. You identify with these people, especially once you know the hardships that they go through. And Naughty Dog has, I mean, really, they've been on the forefront of this movement to, I mean, and a bunch of games have done it in the past too, but especially these recent console generations, Naughty Dog has really been on the forefront of trying to make these incredibly cinematic experiences where it does feel like you're playing and interacting in a, a AAA Hollywood budget movie, like a summer blockbuster. And they're able to immerse you so well, and the graphics are always so beautiful that, I mean, anytime you purchase a Naughty Dog game, you know that you're going to get a bunch of hours of an incredible experience. No matter if you loved or hated that experience, I mean, you're immersed in this world that's incredibly rendered and just state-of-the-art technology. And yeah, you're right. It seems like at the end of, and we've talked about this in prior episodes too, that now that we're at the end of this console cycle, you're seeing the final flex of the bicep of our current generation of technology and what they're capable of doing. And also, since it's another end of console generation title, it's a game that absolutely is going to have a PlayStation 5 port. It's going to be available, and they're going to probably update this at some point, just like they did with the original Last of Us. So
I agree. One thing I did want to bring up, because it was kind of going on as you were talking, so I just wanted to bring up the.
And I can rewind too.
And I wanted to talk about this because this is one of the negative things in The Last of Us, and this is a personal gripe of mine, but it's something I always found kind of stupid, is the whole, I mean, I understand wanting people to, like, explore the world and, pick things up, but, I mean, this isn't 2006 anymore, okay, people? Can we not do the whole collectible thing where we have to go and find, like, these obscure little tiny pickup things that automatically just make our character stronger? Because if you saw, she picked up a manual at one point. This was also in the original, is why I'm bringing this up.
Right.
In certain places, you can just pick stuff up and you're just automatically better just because you found that one item. It's like, why not have, like, a real, like, if you're going to do that, why not have an RPG, like, kind of like upgrade system? See that outdoor magazine that automatically just made her better at that. I'm just like, I understand, like the whole crafting system. Like, I think the crafting system is fine because you're using the materials that you picked up to make ammo, to make med kits. Like, that stuff I understand. That's perfectly fine. Or to make a scope for your rifle, as she does here. But, like, to arbitrarily just have your character, be better because they picked up, a random collectible around the environment, that's something that's never sat well with me. It doesn't matter what game it is. I think these progression systems should be a little, more organic. I get the idea. Yeah. They want you to explore the world, and they want to reward you for doing that. I understand that, but I think there's a better way to go about that. But that's just a little tiny nitpick I have about the system in general. So
yeah, and
I don't know how you feel about it.
I mean, well, you kind of mentioned it. I mean, I guess I would play devil's advocate and say, I understand what you're saying, but I do think part of it is just further incentivizing. Hey, this is a huge world. And again, it goes back to that open world thing that it's like, and again, I don't think this is full, and correct me where I'm wrong here, I don't think that this is full open world. I mean, it is, but there's still story beats that it wants you to follow. So in that way, it's a linear progression. But I do know that when they do implement the open world concepts, it's such an incentivizer to make you kind of look in those extra corridors and cubby holes and see what's around there. And then maybe you think, oh, there might be an item, and then, oh, no, there's a clicker that comes out of nowhere and just fucks you up in one attack.
True.
And you don't know. So, again, I understand how that might almost break the immersion. But, I think for the most part, the fact that they do every other bit of immersion piece so well, it causes me to not be so heavy on specific stuff like that. Especially, they're really trying to implement customization. And they want you to be able to essentially fuck people up in your own preference. They want you to either, be a brawler or use your arrows or, go in guns blazing, customizing the sights, the grips, the scopes. All these other different features that is going to be a part of your arsenal. It adds such another another aspect of, I don't know, of versatility in how you play the game. And you don't have to play it one way or the other. And this has been a theme that essentially all of these tech demos in the past month or month and a half have really all kind of had in common. They want you to be able to play the game your own way and have your own experience with it, which, I do commend them. That's what it appears everyone is doing, and that's the trend now. And if you can do it better than everyone else, you should, especially when you can make something that looks this beautiful.
It definitely does. And the one thing we haven't seen, because you mentioned it as well, is
violence warning, real quick, right here, folks. If you're watching a mature content warning, shit gets real soon here.
Yeah.
Specifically, right there.
Oh god.
When you just have to shank a bitch in the throat to survive.
We don't know how big this world's going to be. They didn't show the map, so they did mention in this thing that it's I think it's based on Seattle, I believe is what they had said, and they tried their hardest to kind of like put that in like a mirror to the point where you would kind of recognize Seattle even in this the state that it's in this game. But we do not know how big this game is going to be. That's kind of the one thing about the original was how linear it was. Like I said, you could go off the beaten path and get all those upgrades and stuff, but it was very much a point A to point B game. So I am curious as to how the open world aspect is going to play, in terms of how big of a concept that's going to be. Going back to Ellie's character, I know I'm jumping around, but I actually forgot she was a lesbian. Like, I actually forgot that was the thing. And that's actually to Naughty Dog's credit. Like, they're not, like, throwing the lesbian thing down your throat. Like, she just happens to be one, and is going through all these things, but it's not a central component. It is a central component of who she is, but it's not the defining factor of who she is.
Right. It's just a part. It's a part of her character. And I commend it too. I like hearing different stories, playing and experiencing new stories. I like that. And of course it matters for people who are gay and they want to see people represent the way they love, and that's cool too. And I also don't find like that's pandering. Like
no, I don't think so either.
Because a character is. And I'm not saying you were saying this, but like a lot of people were and I haven't followed all the criticisms, and I haven't looked up any of the spoilers. I
haven't either.
I've had a ton of fun with The Last of Us. I'm not like a super fan of The Last of Us by any means, but I love Naughty Dog. I always have since Jack and Daxter. Just because someone puts a gay character in a video game doesn't mean that they're trying to push an agenda down your throat. It just means some chicks love chicks and she happens to be one of them. It's like it's not that big of a fucking deal.
Exactly.
And people just kind of turn shit into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Hey, if anything, I have more in common with Ellie. She likes chicks. I like chicks. Yeah, it feels better.
Yeah.
There
you go.
But I do, I think the fact that you've been through a lot of what Ellie has been through, you identify with her character no matter what you think about any kind of life choices.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a woman that has been through hell. Everyone's going through hell, and this world has done things to her, and you kind of have to play out and live out her response to this world that she's living in. So, and that's why I appreciate video games choosing to tell these very brutal, visceral tales, because I mean, especially in a video game, it lends for such a great environment, but you can create characters that you're more invested in than ever before if you are them.
Yeah, and that was to draw a Walking Dead comparison. That was a Negan moment there. She had that
the spike bat
looked a lot like his bat,
And by the way, she's in a rundown hospital, and that's how the first episode of The Walking Dead opens up. Yeah, there's definitely a few Walking Dead callbacks. How could you not have them at this point?
But I mean, I don't know how you feel about me spoiling the first Last of Us.
No,
it's been out long enough, do you think?
Yeah, man. All fun.
I mean, she virtually almost died at the end of the first game. I don't know if she knows that yet. I don't know if Joel has told her by now, because at the end of the first game, he lied to her and said that the treatment didn't work out, because originally the thing with Ellie, I don't know how much the people know, but like, she's immune to the virus. So the whole thing was getting her to a hospital so that they could basically dissect her and use her as the cure for the rest of humanity. Well, Joel runs in, kills everybody at the hospital, and takes Ellie, and saves her. But he basically damned the rest of humanity by doing that. So it's interesting to see how this game is going to reflect that. Does she know that? At this point, and is that why we're not seeing a lot of Joel here? Is she on her own little quest to do whatever? We obviously don't know what kickstarts at the beginning of the game, but the developers do say in this that shit goes down. So obviously the settlement that they're in, gets pretty, screwed up. I can only imagine. So it'll be interesting to see how the overall, cliffhangers from the first game are addressed here, and how it moves the story forward. Basically, is what I'm interested to really see. Is what narrative turns can this take? Because this is a very narrative game, regardless of how much open world they end up putting in this. This game is for the narrative, which is why I think it's such a shame that all this happened to Naughty Dog with all the leaks and stuff, because that's one of the number one reasons you play a game like this. Yes, the gameplay is great, don't get me wrong, but the story is just as important. So to have it spoiled is a big letdown. But I haven't had it spoiled for me because I refuse to look up anything about this game other than what Sony puts out. So
I never looked it up. I never had any friends spoil it for me. Going across the timeline on any of the social media platforms. And again, I think a spoiler is so different from person to person, because even though you might tell me, or I might tell you some of the story beats and the things that happen, and it doesn't take away from the moment. Well, I guess it depends on the person, but a lot of people it does. But also you have to understand, like, especially now, seeing what you're able to do and how you're able to choose how how to traverse the map and how to customize your weapons and how you choose to play every level. That's so much a part of the experience. It's like I was saying. I mean, you live through these different characters. You are them. So, it's you might hear a spoiler, but I still think that once you figure out how to play the game your way, and once you get into it and you start enjoying yourself, then you're going to be interested in why the developers decided to tell the story the way they did, and it's kind of a fresh set of eyes on the game in general. But I think overall, I don't know if it's going to hurt. I don't think it's going to hurt their sales too much.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ultimately going to have that much of an impact, especially at a time where there are so many people that are still starved for entertainment. Now we're also at a time when states are starting to open up. I live here in North Carolina, so does Jeffrey. I mean, they're starting to open up restaurants and haircut places. So fewer and fewer people here in the States at least are having to deal with living in quarantine. But there still are those who are, and more states will have opened up by the time this does come out. But it doesn't change the fact that this has been a title that we've been waiting on for what, 2 or 3 years now? I remember me and you reacting to this live on my Twitch channel a few years ago. Yeah,
the conference. Oh my.
Right.
It's been that long.
It's been that weird, huh? It's been a while. I mean, so we've been waiting on this for a long time, and I think if you're a fan of this franchise, a few spoilers that you've read on the internet, there shouldn't be enough to push you away from this.
Oh, I agree. I think, yes, it's gonna suck, and like for me, it would suck, but I guess because I'm looking at it because I'm a writer, right? Well, we both are in a sense, but I'm a story guy first, honestly, at least. In today's gaming, I am. I'm more of a story guy nowadays than I am a gameplay guy. My gameplay years are behind me. I'm nowhere near as good as I used to be. So when I die over and over and over again because I can't get to something the right way, I need something to help push me forward. And I think story for me, because I am a writer, because I analyze these kinds of things, story is a big thing for me in this generation and generations beyond. So for me, it probably would sting a little bit more, but I also get what you're saying. If the game is good enough, it will stand up on its own, regardless of what you already know. It's the equivalent of reading your favorite novel over and over again, even though you know the end. You know everything about it. You're gonna.
And the developers have said, there's a number of different things that they did not show in this presentation. I mean, different. And you I can remind you a little bit. You kind of saw it back here. It previews some of the different environments that you'll be able to go to and go around and traverse. I mean, you see right here, she's on horseback going through a jungle, going into a city. There's mountainous areas, and of course, there's going to be parts with snow. And again, man, especially when you're talking about a video game that's multiple hours and span all these crazy distances and different parts. I mean, you're talking about a full lived experience. And that's why you would play this. And I'm excited for it. And again, I'm not a huge survival horror fan. As I said earlier in this show, I'm not huge on survival horror, but I do love a game when it does anything well. A well executed game that's fun to play is just fun no matter what.
Exactly.
And a game like this has broad enough appeal to cross over to a person like me that doesn't normally play these types of games that are meant to scare the shit out of you and take you on a roller coaster ride, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is it's been a long time coming. I'm excited about it. I love the customization. I love what they're trying to let you do. I'm already interested in Ellie and what happened after the end of the first one, and I want to know more.
Yeah.
This is it wasn't my favorite reveal out of all of the live presentation reveals.
Mine neither.
And
No.
we're gonna kind of use that as a segue to our next topic. And this is now the fourth conference that we've seen in this vein of quarantine times where people are having, or these developers, name you, are having to put out these presentations online that are kind of thrown together that show off parts of the game. Jeffrey, did you think there's any lasting appeal to this? Is this something that we're going to continue to see, do you think, or are we going back to how it was as soon as our normal commonplace world comes back?
Well, it's kind of weird because they were doing this anyway, even when it was normal. Like, I mean, like the conference that you and I were just talking about, that was streamed. Yes, it was live and in person,
Right.
but it was also streamed here at home. So I guess it just depends on what kind of person you are. Do you like going to these big events and hanging out and meeting other gamers and making these big things, or are you more chill like we are? Where we can't get to these places and we just got to do our own thing. But honestly, I think this is the easier route, and I think it would save them a shit ton of money if you think about it too. Because think about like and I'm talking from a company perspective, because you gotta rent out these places. You've got to rent out space for your venue and all these different things.
I mean,
You don't have to do that anymore.
the last big name E3 press conference that they did, Sony just decided that they weren't going to do a press
they weren't gonna
conference.
show up.
Why
Yeah, they
spend why spend that many millions of dollars
Yeah.
when you're trying to develop all these new titles? You're trying to make sure that you have all the hardware ready for launch, and Sony and a lot of these press conferences are just, they're choosing to do their own event rather than do these huge E3 trade shows now, or even Gamescom. I remember the Tokyo Game Show. Like at a point in time, in my life growing up, those were the most exciting times of the year. Around that
I agree.
early summer time when E3 would happen and they would do all the press conferences, and it was fun shit, man. It would really amp you up for what is Sony and Xbox going to show off, and it hyped up the console wars. But now you see this because of the quarantine and people having to do things differently. These very nicely put together video drops of the people who know the games best, the developers, showcasing to all their fans on the internet all the pluses and minuses of these video games. And I have to tell you, man, I'm more excited for these games after you and I are able to sit here and talk about a 23 some odd minute demo that goes into all of the individual aspects that you're going to be spending $60 on. I mean, that's it really, especially now as these games are growing and have more content in them. I want the developer to show me, hey, look at all the reasons why you're going to buy this.
Right. And I think that's something to be said too. If you've looked back at the conferences lately, throughout the years, they've gotten pretty bad, right? Like they're corny as shit. These marketing people just come out of nowhere and start blabbing off bullshit that nobody cares about, and it takes forever to get to the actual game. And then by then you're drained from hearing all that, mumbo jumbo crap that you don't care about. You finally get to the big reveal, or, the gameplay section or whatever. And it's some guy off stage, playing these demo reels as it goes. And it feels all a bit forced when it's a big, huge,
Yeah, and then there's a stage and there's
arena
an
and all that.
audience. Yeah, yeah. And then
I
there,
get it. I do in terms of like massive appeal. You want people there. You want people screaming for joy. Like I understand that mentality, but I don't think it works. Not anymore. Not the way that the internet is such a staple of our culture now. There's no reason not to use it.
yeah,
I just
there really isn't. And, I even like, so for example, we can even kind of talk about what our favorite press conferences were. As of right
yeah
now, I would say my favorite is probably Ghost of Tsushima,
yeah
followed in a close second by Cyberpunk 2077. I think Ghost of Tsushima. Well, and part of it is just showing off a samurai, an open world samurai game, which is fucking
right.
awesome. But
hmm
on top of that, the fact that the developers, while the game was being played, kind
yeah
of wanted you to look around the video. Like instead of them
right.
pointing your attention to every little thing, there was the part when you're running past and you see like an animal attacking someone. So you already know you're
hmm
going to have to deal with the animal attacks. Like,
right.
it's more fun when they put the developers just kind of drop natural Easter eggs for people to kind of pick up on, and I feel like they did the best job of doing that.
hmm
Where I feel as though Last of Us did the best job showing the real brutality of the world that they're
hmm
trying to convey. So it's for
right.
different reasons, but if I'm ranking them right now, I would definitely have Ghost of Tsushima number one.
Um, that's interesting because at first I would, if you would have asked me this yesterday, I would have said Cyberpunk 2077.
Right.
Just because I played The Witcher 3 and I loved that. But as far as like I know how that game's gonna pan out, at least in terms of like the overall mechanics and stuff, because a lot of that was in The Witcher 3. So like I know the basic layout of a CD Projekt Red game.
Right.
Um, but I am interested in Ghost of Tsushima because I haven't played a Soccer Punch game since what, Infamous 3,
Oh
I
my god,
believe.
I forgot Infamous existed.
So, and I mean that was back on the PlayStation 3, like early PlayStation 3 days,
Yeah.
Infamous was. So, I'm 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 more curious about Ghost of Tsushima simply because I want to see how they handle an open world because they've never done that before. Um,
Right.
so I'm curious to see a developer take a different approach, just from a technical and imaginative perspective. Um, I mean, also gameplay, but just to see what they can offer differently that that Cyberpunk or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, although we don't know much about that at this point yet. Um, I want to see a different studio take on the open world approach. So I'm with you. Number one, probably Ghost of Tsushima. Number two for me is probably Cyberpunk 2077, and then The Last of Us third. But that doesn't mean that it's like bottom tier. It just means
Yeah.
um,
Right.
it just means like I'm satisfied with The Last of Us
I mean, listen,
at this point.
minus the Xbox, fake gameplay presentation.
Oh
Essentially,
Jesus!
everything else has just been, hey, look at what we can do now.
Yeah,
Which I appreciate since we're on the cusp of a new console cycle. I mean, we're looking
right.
at brand new technologies that are going to allow us to interact with these crazy huge worlds that we've never been able to interact with quite as well before, and we've already had these crazy open world experiences. So the fact
hmm
that they're advancing upon it now, I like the
Definitely.
fact that these games are so big that it essentially requires a demo like this to really show off
Exactly.
how many different things you're going to be experiencing in this video game. Like I think this is
Yep.
a part of a trend towards the new normal, and I'm not mad at it. I no matter what we're talking about, whether it be The Last of Us or a PS5 tech demo
Right.
or Ghost of Tsushima, I'm more pumped now than I have been ever before.
I think so too, and I think these these individual ones that because that's the thing, the actual companies themselves are doing these individual things. This isn't a, you know, or at least these last two have been in terms of like Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us. Um, the developers are putting these together. These aren't things that is being hoarded in as a major event where it's going to be trailer after trailer. These are individual videos put out at separate times, which I think allows people to appreciate the individual games more so than just having them all dumped on them at once. And I like the in depth that goes along with that. So
Yeah.
I think this is a great approach, and ultimately, yeah, I'm really excited to see what the future of gaming really holds.
Yeah, I echo pretty much all of what you just said. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to my man Tony Dunn, who joined us in the chat room for a little while today. Sorry if I didn't see your comments. We're new to this whole platform.
I was supposed to be watching that shit.
So,
Oh,
no,
I'm so
dude,
sorry.
I don't even. I had forgotten completely about it.
Oh,
But shout out Tony Dunn. Check out the C3 Carolina Cat Chronicles podcast every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. But yeah, Jeffrey, I think that's about it for today, man. Yet another show in the books.
yeah. I just wanted to mention something briefly.
Yeah.
Next week on Thursday, which is the day before we do this podcast, at I think it's 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that would actually be what, 4 here, because they're 3 hours behind. Is that right?
If it'll be what time is it doing there? 12?
1. So that would
1.
be
So it'll be
4, right?
yeah, it'll be 4 here. They're 3 hours behind us.
Okay, so 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is what we're doing. They are going. PlayStation is going to be having a little showcase. Actually, it's not a little showcase. It's an hour-long showcase of the games you can expect to play straight out of the gate for the PlayStation 5 when it launches.
Yeah, we might try and make this fun. We'll try and we'll definitely be able to play the video, and we'll see about maybe even having some more guests or. Yeah, that'd be a fun topic for us to cover next week. As we again, man, these consoles. I mean, they're gonna be here before you know it. They're coming fast and furious, and a whole a brand new generation of gaming is upon us, and and I'm excited about it. Jeffrey, go ahead and tell all of our listeners where you can be reached online.
So you can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Jeffrored, so JEFFRORED. And like I said, that's the same for both Facebook and Twitter, so you can find me either way.
Awesome. As always, my name is Cody Lash, and you can find me on Twitter at CodyLac, at CODYLAC. Real quick, I wanted to give a shout out and a rest in peace to a very dear friend of mine named Sarah Kafour, who lost her life a few days ago. She was a fellow handicapped sister of mine, and I just want to tell her and her family how much I love them. And this episode is dedicated to you. So love you, Sarah. Love you, Joyce. Love the entire Kafour family. And Jeffrey, until next time, my brother, and for all of our viewers listening, peace and love.